Are you struggling to create an intentional headspace, unable to connect deeper with yourself? Come, and together let's address the elephant in the room. I'm your host, Sinead Roche, and this is the Uncomfortable Podcast. I'm someone who has a very expressive face, so you can tell when I'm curious, you can tell when I'm shocked, you can tell when I'm disgusted, and you can definitely tell when I'm judgmental. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing that I'm judgmental, depending, of course. And I think that's something we need to talk a bit more on, because judgment in itself is such a natural process that we as humans have. But I feel like we're constantly told to be ashamed about it. And yes, given in how you do it and what opinions you're trying to, form about other persons or how you're trying to project onto other people. Yes, in that context, it's definitely negative. But I think there are so many advantages that come with being a judgmental person. But I think we need to stray away from this idea that we have to be neutral towards everything or that we can't form an opinion. I think that's just a natural thing of being a human. You can form an opinion about something and not project it onto someone else or demand that someone, changes their behaviors. It's just for you. And so I wanted to really understand this tool a bit more, because judgments help us to make decisions. They help us in different social environments that we're new to. And I don't think that this is something that we need to be ashamed about. So with that said, let's look at what judgment is. So judgment is a natural cognitive shortcut that helps us to navigate social environments. It's basically allowing us to form opinions and draw conclusions from what's happening around us. We might use past experiences. Maybe we use the current, of course, the context in which things are happening, and different mental shortcuts that we already have. So maybe it's anchoring effects and biases, or basically you're just pulling from past experiences and what you've experienced and what you've been told or what you've looked at. And you're kind of using all the information that you already have access to and assessing the current situation. And that's a really normal thing to do, because it then leads us to making a decision. And I've talked about this already in episodes where I talk about what it means to make a decision and the fact that we have two different systems. So system one is this kind of automatic and intuitive judgment. And so what this might look like is that if you're seeing something new for the first time, you automatically might be scared, or you might just be what's going on there, So it's kind of already oh, okay, I'm a bit inquisitive, judgment on that side. And so you want to go close to what's happening, or you're not really open to this kind of new idea that's maybe being expressed. And then system two is, using this deliberate, logical, and kind of slow processing of it. And so then maybe at that point, you kind of, you see this new idea that's happening, or this new event that's kind of happening in front of you. And yeah, you work with already your first judgment, which is ooh, maybe I stay away from it. Yeah, I'm a bit curious, but I stay away from it. And then with system two, it's okay, logically, I understand that this doesn't necessarily impact me, or I don't know, you kind of just think about it a bit more in depth, you take more time to assess the current matter, and then you can judge from there or form your opinion and make a decision from there. And with that understanding of what judgment is, I think it's really neutral. It sounds really neutral, but yet there's such a negative context surrounding judgment. And that's because oftentimes when we're judging, or when you hear the term judging, it's used in the sense to put other people down and to kind of, position yourself, even if it's only mentally, in a higher position to others. And it's kind of this short-term, boost for your own ego that you're better than someone. And I think, yes, that's definitely a bad thing. I think especially if you have that tendency to just naturally, assess people, and you're constantly just trying to form a hierarchy in your own head. Yes, there's negative aspects to that. But that's also really a natural process, because you're trying to assess how you yeah, you're trying to assess basically your social like environment. And naturally, like if it's something, it's a new territory, especially territory. But if it's a new surrounding, especially, then you want to make sure that you're safe. And so then you are trying to figure out strategically and through judgments, whether or not this person might be a threat to you, how you stand, where they stand and stuff, according to different, opinions that you might have or like values that you've had in the past or different social rules that exist. And so that's also a really natural thing. But with that said, I think it's really important that we gauge like what our judgments say about us, because oftentimes, yeah, a lot of times when we are judging actually people, it is a lot of projection. And I think over time, as we become more self-aware, I think it's really important to understand, sometimes it's really just a reflection about maybe what we want, maybe about something that we're envious of, maybe about other like insecurities that we have, that it's easier to say it about other people rather than to look inward on ourselves. And so with that said, first of all, I want to say that I judge. I'm a very judgmental person. As I said, I think it's a really natural thing to do. But I don't even want to say just in the past, but even like currently, like I do sometimes, I look at other people and I'm just like, really? Like, really? But it does say a lot more about me than it does about them. So some of the judgments, I took note of some of the frequent things that I'm thinking about other people when I realize that I'm like doing it in a negative sense, is that I judge people who have no ambition. I judge laziness. I judge not adhering to like certain social norms. So like, I don't understand when people are speaking really loudly in a room that's obviously like supposed to be quiet. Like, why are you on the phone right now? I judge that. I judge not going to the gym, or at least I have in the past, like really just judge like, why are you not, I judge people with tattoos that show. And I judge people who are doing something on their own for the first time. And that I've done in the past, like definitely. And with a lot of judgments, people often say like, if you're someone who always has something to say about other people, first of all, you should focus on yourself. And that's true, because like you really don't have to give your 2 cents about everyone and every matter. And the reason why it's important that you focus on yourself, though, is because what you're most likely judging is stemming from like your insecurities, and you're just like projecting it onto other people. Is also something that is a defense mechanism that can help to temporarily like boost your self-esteem, but it means that you also kind of avoid confronting your own shit. And of course, that like where you put your focus is also where your attention is going to go. So I think it's also important to understand, what do those judgments, what do they say about me personally? So kind of digging a bit deeper and having to sit down with myself in the past, because I realize I do quite often project. The reason why I used to judge people who have no ambition is because I feel like I have no value when I'm not actively working towards my potential. The reason why I judge people who are lazy is because I feel guilty when I take rests. The reason why I judge people who don't adhere to certain social norms is because I envy people who don't feel a need to adhere to unwritten rules and feel comfortable within themselves to that degree. Okay, sometimes certain things are a bit rude, but to another degree, it's like, oh, you can just do whatever, because it's really like, why am I so focused on keeping this unwritten rule? Like, why am I adhering to it to this degree? I used to judge people who don't go to the gym because I feel guilty when I'm not actively working out. And that had a lot to do with like the fact that like my worth was tied to my weight and my productivity in that sense. I judge people with tattoos that show. I have tattoos now that show as well. And I think I was just envious of people. And I think I also thought that those persons, weren't professional. And I think I attached so much worth and value to like what your appearance meant and how that like, what did that say about your maturity? And I think as I grow up, it's just something that I've realized, like, yeah, just because you have tattoos that show doesn't mean that you're like immature. It doesn't mean that you're not professional. It just means that you have tattoos, you know. But I think I was just envious at the time as well, because again, it's this thing of like you get to break social norms that I feel like I was just sticking to so heavily. And when it comes to like judging people who are doing something on their own for the first time, I used to be so envious of people who didn't feel the need to be perfect the first time they did something. Like they can just let go and just do it. And what I'm trying to show you is that a lot of these judgments that I used to form, and some that I do still form, I don't think from this list, but I do definitely have other judgments as well. But they show a lot of past insecurities, like that I've had. They show values, they show ideas. And when you look at me now, hopefully, and when you hear me talk now, hopefully, or at least when I hear myself talk, I realize that I've been able to dismiss a lot of those judgments. And I realize that, yeah, sometimes I do still make certain opinions about persons, but I really try to then just like tell myself, like, what the fuck does it matter? You know, like that's them, that's not you. So like you really don't need to give your 2 cents there. And I think that when you can take like a step back from your judgments, like, you know, being so concrete and meaning that everyone else has to like follow, you know, your idea of what life is supposed to look like or uphold the same values as you, I think you can then start to be a bit more open-minded and realize that there are different perspectives to life and that people have a different way of living, and that means that yours isn't the only one. And what then happens is that I think as great as it is to be surrounded by people who also like align with you, I think it's really interesting to be around persons who have, you know, different perspectives. And because you're not just focused necessarily on passing on this judgment so quickly, you allow yourself to be curious. And I think that curiosity allows you to be more open-minded and allows you to take in information from them, or like, you know, actually learn from their experiences and not just dismiss them because, you know, you judge them to some degree for the fact that maybe they're not a consistent gym goer, for instance, and that's something that you really value. So I think in that sense, it allows you also to like broaden your circle the more you're able to take a step back from your judgments and realize that it's okay that you have them, but it doesn't necessarily need to be forced on to other people. And moving forward, with that said, I still do have definitely a tendency to judge persons often. And I feel like the minute I'm realizing that I'm focusing so much on other people, what I try to do is literally redirect my mind to myself. And I ask myself the question, I'm like, are you a bit jealous right now? Like, and other times when I realize that I'm just being a dick, because that's also, I feel like, a quite often normal experience for people to have, is that sometimes we're just assholes. Like, you just gotta tell yourself to shut the fuck up. Just shut the fuck up at that point. And honestly, tell yourself that, like, if you like it, like if they like it, then I motherfucking love it for them, and just move on. I don't think it's necessary to put so much effort and emphasis on like even mentally like putting someone down in your own mind to like make yourself feel better. But I think that's something you have to be able to learn how to do, because it takes time to recondition like what it means to judge people, and it takes time to not automatically belittle someone, especially when you're in moments where you've just been feeling down about yourself. But that too is just part of the learning process when it comes to, utilizing your judgment and utilizing the skill that it is. But I think at the end of the day, it's just important to remember that it's important to be judgmental, to form opinions, but also to be critical about the judgments that you are making and what they do say about you. But it's not something that you necessarily need to be ashamed about, because I feel like there's this entire shift nowadays that's like, we all need to be neutral towards something. I'm like, no, why? Like, I don't necessarily need to, tell everybody my judgment or tell everybody my opinion about something. No, but I think for yourself personally, it's important. It helps you to kind of understand, a roadmap to life, a roadmap to the environment that's around you. And I think it just tells you more about you than you realize. And so it's just kind of cool to see that like skills that we naturally have that we might not necessarily see in a positive light, they can actually be useful for us to help improve ourselves. And I think we can learn a lot more than we realize by looking how we potentially project onto other people, and how we mentally try to figure out, what's going on around us and how we're like judging and forming opinions about certain situations. And so I just think that's something that we need to, not shy away from, and not like, look down upon constantly, but kind of see that it has a purpose to some degree. And with that said, guys, I want you guys to ask yourselves, what's a common thought that you have about people? And how do you find that it might relate to you? Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Uncomfortable Podcast. Make sure to tune in every Monday for a new episode on Spotify and YouTube, and go ahead and check out our TikTok and our Instagram for more content. Bye!